He didn't plan to be a hero. He didn't even believe in aliens until the day they dropped from the sky in ships that rumbled like gods and scorched half the planet. Now Anthony, a ground soldier hardened by survival, was dragging a half-conscious alien woman from the wreckage of a burning palace on Earth's edge. Her skin shimmered beneath ash and blood. Her eyes, barely open, carried centuries of pain. He thought he was saving a lost royal, a cosmic damsel scorched by war. But when her lips parted in a trembling whisper, everything shattered. "They used me to catch you." That sentence, it hit harder than any blast. This wasn't love at first sight. It was a trap carved from destiny. She was the bait. He was the target. And yet, when their hands met in the flames, something ignited that no one, alien or human, could have predicted. If love is a battlefield, this was its epicenter, and neither side was ready for what came next. The skies had been red for days, not from sunsets or dust storms, but from the silent hovering of vessels not built by man. They came without warning, without message. And when their engines roared, cities fell, governments collapsed, and Earth stopped pretending it was alone. Anthony had lost count of the number of missions he'd been thrown into since the war began. He no longer fought for medals or orders. He fought because standing still meant dying, and maybe because part of him still hoped for one last win. This mission was supposed to be a recovery operation, search the burning ruins of the alien consulate, once a symbol of peace, and retrieve any survivors or secrets. But the flames had done their job too well. What was left of the building looked like a collapsed skeleton, each wall blackened with rage. As he moved through the rubble, the crunch of ash beneath his boots gave way to something else. A sound. A cough. Weak. Female. Anthony turned sharply, raising his rifle, but what he saw wasn't a threat. She was crumpled beneath a cracked column, her silver dress torn and half-burned. Her skin, a shade of twilight blue, was coated in soot. Her limbs shook. She looked broken. He hesitated. This wasn't protocol. They'd said the building was cleared, but instincts honed in fire screamed otherwise. Anthony slung his rifle, dropped beside her, and gently touched her shoulder. Her eyes fluttered open, violet, glowing faintly, and filled with terror. "Don't move," he whispered. "I've got you." She tried to speak, lips cracked, voice barely a breath. Too late. He didn't ask what she meant. He just lifted her carefully, cradling her like a porcelain blade. She was lighter than she looked, fragile, yet something about her presence pulsed with strange power, like carrying lightning wrapped in silk. As they stepped out into the open, firelight cast eerie halos around them. Other soldiers shouted through comms. Some tried to stop him. Others just stared. None knew what he was holding. Back at the emergency shelter, she drifted in and out of consciousness. Anthony refused to leave her side. Something in him, something deeper than duty, kept him grounded. When she woke fully, it wasn't confusion on her face. It was regret. "I'm not what you think," she murmured, refusing to meet his eyes. "You're alive. That's all I need to know," he replied, offering her water. Her hands trembled. "They sent me to draw someone in, someone important." Anthony stilled. "Who?" Her gaze finally met his. "You." Silence filled the tent. He didn't speak. Couldn't. Not because of the words, but because something in her voice told him she hadn't wanted this either. She was the bait. But something had gone wrong. The fire should have killed her. And yet, here she was, still breathing, still staring at him like she didn't understand why he came back for her. Maybe he didn't either. But that night, while the stars burned behind clouds of smoke, Anthony realized something deeper than betrayal had been born in the flames. Something that no plan, alien or human, had prepared for. Smoke still clung to her skin. Even after Eleanor had been cleaned, bandaged, and wrapped in thermal sheets inside the field unit, Anthony could smell the scorched scent of melted metal and burning earth whenever he stood near her. It reminded him of the palace ruins, of how close she'd been to becoming part of the debris. Just another casualty. He sat across from her, helmet resting beside him, gloves off, fingers still stained from rubble and blood. His gaze never left her face, though she refused to return it. She hadn't spoken again since her chilling confession. They sent me to catch you. He could still hear it in her voice. Not defiance, not manipulation, but shame. A crack in her, as visible as the scar now running across her collarbone. She touched it often, as if the pain helped remind her that she was still here. You don't have to say anything. Anthony finally broke the silence. His voice was rough, unused to gentleness. But you should know I don't run from traps. Never have. Eleanor flinched, not because of his word, but how steady they were. Why didn't you leave me? She whispered, fingers curled tightly around the sheet. You had orders. He gave a humorless smile. You looked like hell, but not like someone meant to die in it. She blinked, then scoffed lightly. It was almost a laugh if you squinted hard enough. Is that your way of flirting? I don't flirt with people who try to set me up for death, he replied, folding his arms, then added, but I might make an exception. This time she didn't laugh. Her face softened, tired and pained, like someone too worn out to pretend anymore. I didn't choose this role, she admitted. My bloodline, my body, it was engineered to appeal to humans. Our scientists studied your kind. They built my physiology to look fragile, familiar, attractive. Anthony swallowed. The thought unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. So, what are you saying? You're synthetic? No, she said quickly. I'm born, but groomed, bred. They needed someone to be the face of peace, so they could pick the perfect target when the illusion failed. And that target was me? Eleanor nodded slowly. You weren't just brave. You were known for defying orders, for saving people who didn't matter on the record. That made you predictable, heroic, and stupid, Anthony muttered. No, she corrected, human. The word landed heavier than he expected. She said it with a tone that was neither mocking nor admiring, just honest. The silence returned, thicker than before. Outside, distant gunfire echoed like distant thunder. The war hadn't paused, even if their moment had. Finally, Anthony stood. Whatever game your people were playing, it's over now. They left you to burn. She didn't respond. He paused at the tent's flap, hesitating. Get some rest. You're safe here. For now. As he stepped out, her voice floated after him, soft, almost broken. Am I? He didn't turn back. Couldn't. Not yet. Because no one in this war was truly safe. Not the soldiers, not the spies, and definitely not the woman whose body was designed to seduce a hero, and whose soul just wanted to be free. The next morning, the sky bled orange across a gray horizon. A thick film of ash coated every surface in the temporary camp, including the outer lining of Eleanor's tent. Anthony stood outside, watching sunrise emerge like a bruised eye, arms folded tightly, jaw clenched harder than steel. He hadn't slept. Not because of threats, but because of her voice still crawling in his head. Am I safe? No one should have to ask that after being pulled from a fire, especially not someone who nearly died. But then again, Eleanor wasn't just anyone. She was a ghost dressed as a goddess, and everything about her presence, the way she moved, the way her eyes held pain deeper than any battlefield scar, challenged what Anthony thought he understood about trust. When he stepped back into the tent, she was already sitting upright. No guards, no restraints. He had insisted. It wasn't mercy, it was clarity. If she wanted him dead, she'd had plenty of chances. Her gaze met his without flinching this time. You didn't sleep, did you? Barely. She shifted, wincing from her healing ribs. You humans like to breathe so loudly. Anthony smirked. We like to live loudly too. That earned a faint smile, one that evaporated as quickly as it appeared. Her fingers toyed with the edge of the blanket. They were long, slender, designed for elegance perhaps, yet now bruised, discolored. I keep thinking about the people I saw die, she murmured. Not just mine, yours too. Soldiers, civilians, all burned in one burst. Anthony didn't respond. He couldn't. The loss had numbed him long ago. I thought I was above this, that if I played my role, smiled, looked helpless, spoke your language, you'd fall for it, she added, eyes narrowing, not at him, but herself. But you didn't fall. You jumped in after me. Because that's what we do, Anthony replied, voice low. We jump. We run into hell if it means pulling someone out. Eleanor blinked hard. I wasn't supposed to survive. The escape pod was never activated. I think they wanted me to burn with the building. Erase the evidence. Clean the chessboard. Anthony's hands curled into fists. They used you. Like a weapon. Like an object. Exactly, she whispered. And for a while, I accepted it. The air between them tightened. Anthony sat down on the metal crate beside her cot. Well, you're not an object anymore. You're not anyone's plan. Eleanor turned her head, studying him. Why are you like this? Like what? Willing to trust me after everything I've admitted. I told you I was sent to trick you. Yeah, he nodded. But you didn't. You warned me. That's not something a weapon does. She stared at him for a moment longer. Then, you're strange. Anthony leaned back, stretching his sore legs. You should meet my mother. That made her chuckle softly, a warm, broken sound that startled even her. She quickly glanced away, as if afraid of what she'd let slip. He noticed. You can laugh. You're allowed. No one's ever made me want to, she whispered. Silence returned again, but it was lighter this time, not as suffocating. Outside, distant orders barked. A shuttle was preparing for relocation. Anthony stood, glancing over his shoulder. They'll move the wounded within the hour. You'll be assigned a new tent, new watch. I'll make sure you're on my list. She looked up, eyes unreadable. Why? Because things built to break don't always have to. And with that, he left. Eleanor sat in stunned silence, pulse quickened, chest tightening with something unfamiliar. Hope. Days passed, but time inside the camp felt suspended. Each hour drawn out between silence, recovery, and unspoken questions. Eleanor was relocated to a more secure corner of the compound, one flanked by surveillance drones and a few cautious medics. But despite the official protocols, Anthony still visited her every evening. Not because of duty, because something pulled him back. A quiet thread neither of them dared name yet. She sat cross-legged on the thin cot when he entered again, arms wrapped around her knees, glowing eyes studying the sky through the tense plastic screen. Her wounds were healing, but not just physically. Her posture no longer sagged under guilt alone. She had begun asking questions, curious, hesitant, personal ones. Tonight was different. You could stop coming, she said without looking at him. I could, he replied, removing his gear and setting it beside the door. She glanced sideways. Why don't you? Maybe I like talking to someone who doesn't bark orders or lie about how close we are to losing. A dry smile touched her lips. That's funny. I was literally built to lie. Anthony paused. Built? She turned, lowering her legs slowly to the floor. My people use technology to manipulate growth. Our royal line was engineered over generations. Beauty, poise, linguistic flexibility, even neural empathy, all selected to please Earth's senses. When our planet's first opened diplomacy, they wanted someone who would charm your people without trying. Anthony stepped closer, crouching to her eye level. So what part of you is real? Eleanor swallowed. The part that's terrified. She meant it. He could see it in her eyes, so sharp and unfiltered now, like a reflection she could no longer control. And it broke something in him. You're more real than anyone here, he said softly, because you admitted what most people never do. You were used, and you survived. Eleanor looked away, visibly struggling with his words. I was programmed to be appealing, she murmured. But what I feel now, none of it was in the instructions. Anthony's chest tightened. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he pulled the ration bar from his coat pocket and placed it on her lap. You need calories, he said. She stared at it like it was gold. You keep feeding me, she said quietly. Why? Because if you fade away, the last honest voice in this war disappears with you. Eleanor took a small bite. You sound like a romantic. I'm a soldier. Romance isn't in the handbook. But it's in your actions, she whispered. Their eyes locked. That quiet, unspoken thread between them pulled taut, vibrating with something deeper. This wasn't manipulation. This wasn't programming. It was two people, shattered from different wars, finding a reason not to fall apart. Anthony stood again, breathing deeper than he meant to. I requested access to the files on the diplomatic registry, he said. I wanted to verify your story. And, her voice trembled. You weren't lying, he said. The princess was registered under an alias, but the biometric logs match you, and the ship, it was rigged to burn. You were supposed to die. Eleanor shut her eyes. They erased my identity. No, Anthony said, stepping forward. They tried to, but you're still here. She looked up, truly looked at him this time, and the wall between them finally cracked wide open. I don't want to be their weapon anymore, she said, but I don't know how to be anything else. You're already becoming something else, Anthony said. What? He leaned down, voice like gravel but steady. Human. She reached for his hand before she could stop herself. His fingers didn't flinch when hers touched them. That night, under the synthetic lights of a dying world, Anthony didn't speak again. He just let her hold his hand, and neither of them let go. Because when everything else burns, sometimes the only thing left to hold on to is the one person who sees you. Not as a weapon, not as a princess, but as someone worth saving again. The war raged on, but to Anthony it was like watching a film he'd already seen too many times. The fires, the gunfire, the promises of victory that always seemed to slip away. Each mission was another step forward into darkness. But tonight, something felt different. It wasn't the war. It was Eleanor. She was there again, waiting for him. Not in the same guarded, distant way she had been at first, but with something softer. Maybe it was the way she looked at him now, as if she no longer saw him as just a soldier. Maybe it was the way she spoke, hesitating as if each word was a confession. I'm going to die out here, aren't I? Eleanor said quietly, not looking at him as she watched the shadows flicker on the walls of the tent. Anthony froze, his boots echoing in the silence as he entered. He wasn't expecting that question. He wasn't expecting any questions at all, not after everything she'd already been through. But there it was, hanging between them like an unwanted truth. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat down on the cot beside her, watching her. Her face, still bruised from the blast, had become more vulnerable in the days since he'd pulled her from the fire. She was healing physically, but emotionally, he wasn't so sure, and that worried him. No, he said softly. You're not going to die. Not while I'm here. Her eyes flicked toward him then, sharp as ever. Why? Because you don't deserve that. You deserve more than what your people did to you. More than being bait for some trap. Eleanor's laugh was a bitter, hollow thing. You think I deserve a better fate than this? You think you're the one who's going to save me? Yes, he said, with a finality that surprised even him. You're more than what they made you, and you're sure as hell more than I expected. She gave him a wry smile, but there was no humor in it. I'm not a damsel, Anthony. I was built to be useful, to catch people like you. Not anymore. His voice was steady and it cut through the thick tension in the air. Not in my eyes. She didn't respond, but the shift in the air between them was palpable. He could feel it. Something was changing. She was changing. For the first time since their meeting, he allowed himself to wonder, was it just him, or had something shifted in her as well? Was it possible that she saw him differently now? That this had stopped being just a rescue mission and had started to feel personal? They sat in silence for a long time after that, the sound of distant explosions and gunfire almost fading into the background. The hum of the field camp felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. I never asked for this life, Eleanor finally said, breaking the quiet. I didn't ask to be a weapon, to be the bait, to be the thing everyone looks at and sees nothing but usefulness. I get it. Anthony's voice was soft but firm. You didn't choose any of it. I didn't, she whispered. But what do I do now, Anthony? Now that I'm not what they wanted me to be? You choose, he said, meeting her gaze. You choose who you want to be. I don't have the answers for you. Hell, I'm not even sure what the hell I'm doing. But I know you're more than a mission, Eleanor. You're a person. And that's what matters. Eleanor didn't respond right away. She just studied him, like she was trying to figure him out in ways that had nothing to do with his status as a soldier. For the first time, Anthony felt vulnerable. He had never expected this, never expected to be so captivated by someone who was, in theory, his enemy. But there she was, broken and beautiful, wearing the scars of her past like armor. "I'm afraid of what I'll become," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm afraid of what I might do next, of how far I'll go to survive." Anthony reached out without thinking, his hand covering hers. His touch was warm, grounding. "You won't become what they want you to. Not as long as I'm here." She looked at him, her eyes flickering with something deep, something raw. "And what about you? Will you be here for me even when the war's over? Even if it means breaking every rule I've ever known?" "Yes," he said, his voice unwavering. "I'll be here. I'll fight for you. I don't know where this is going, but I know I can't walk away." And in that moment, with the distant fires still burning in the world beyond, Eleanor finally let herself believe it. She didn't know where this path would take her, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to walk it with him, the soldier who had saved her, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The shuttle ride was short but grueling. The atmosphere within the vehicle was thick with tension. Anthony and Eleanor sat in opposite corners, the silence between them now charged with something neither of them had expected. The war, its endless grind, was a background hum that neither of them cared to acknowledge. Their thoughts, their shared glances, were far heavier than anything the world outside could throw at them. Eleanor's body still ached from the blast that had nearly taken her life. Her skin was healing, but the emotional wounds were taking longer to mend. She had been a weapon, a tool, a pawn in a game too large for her to comprehend. But Anthony had seen her differently. He had pulled her from the fire. He had chosen her. He had given her something no one else had ever offered, a choice. But what was she supposed to do with it? As they approached a new safe zone, she felt a strange weight in her chest. The path ahead seemed full of choices, but every step she took, every decision she made, was still tethered to her past, her bloodline, the training she had undergone, the mission she had been created for. And then there was Anthony, human, passionate, fiercely loyal. He didn't see her as a tool, and that terrified her more than anything. "You okay?" Anthony asked, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Eleanor turned to look at him, the edge of vulnerability clear in her eyes. She could see it in his face too, the unspoken tension, the things left unsaid. They had started down a road neither of them knew how to navigate, but here they were, facing it together. "I don't know anymore," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what's real anymore, Anthony. I don't know if I can be the person you think I am." He turned towards her, his expression softening. "You don't have to be anything for me. I just need you to be you. All I want is for you to decide for yourself." The words hung in the air between them, like a promise, a lifeline. Eleanor looked out the shuttle window, watching the planet below slowly grow smaller. She could almost feel the weight of everything pressing down on her chest. But there, in that moment, with Anthony's words still resonating in her mind, she realized something. She had the power to choose. That night, they stood beneath the sterile glow of the medical tent. Eleanor had been placed under observation after the ride, her vitals monitored closely by a team of doctors, but she had already told them everything. The synthetic compound that had been designed to heal her was starting to react with the human elements in her bloodstream. It was too risky. They needed to change her DNA. It was her only option. Anthony had been working with the medical team, trying to find a solution, but everything they suggested felt wrong. He couldn't help but feel responsible. He had been the one to bring her here. He had been the one to pull her from the flames. "I can't lose you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Eleanor shook her head. "You didn't lose me, Anthony. You saved me. I've been running from what I am for so long, but now, I don't know how to run anymore." Her words pierced him, and for a moment he saw the girl he had rescued, not the alien princess. She was just a person who had been made into a weapon, a person who had suffered far too much. I won't leave you, he whispered, stepping closer. I promised I'd fight for you, and I will. Whatever happens next, we'll figure it out. Together. She met his eyes, the weight of her past still heavy in her gaze. But something else flickered there. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was trust. I don't know how to trust anyone, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Then let me show you, Anthony said, his voice steady and unwavering. Let me show you what trust looks like. As they stood in the sterile light of the medical tent, the weight of the world pressed in on them from every direction. The war, the politics, the systems designed to control her. It all seemed so small now. She wasn't just a weapon. She wasn't just someone's tool. She was a person with a future, and she wasn't going to let anyone else decide it for her. Eleanor took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of clarity. She didn't have to follow the path laid out for her. She didn't have to live in the shadow of her past. And for the first time, she felt like she was allowed to make that decision. But there was something else, something more urgent that tugged at her heart. A need, a longing. When Anthony reached out and gently cupped her face, the world stopped. She had been trained to resist affection, to avoid emotional connections. But in that moment, she didn't resist. She leaned into him, closing her eyes as his touch steadied her. He wasn't just saving her from the fire, he was saving her from herself. The silence in the camp was shattered by the unmistakable screech of an alarm. Anthony was already on his feet, adrenaline coursing through his veins before the sound even reached his ears. He grabbed his rifle, ready for anything, but nothing could have prepared him for the betrayal that was about to unfold. "Eleanor!" he shouted, rushing toward the tent where he knew she would be, hoping she wasn't caught in the chaos. The camp was under attack. When he arrived at her tent, the sight that greeted him made his heart drop. The entrance flap was wide open, and her cot was empty. His stomach twisted as he darted inside, searching the room in a panic. There was no sign of her, no trace of her presence, except for a single, folded note on her pillow. His breath caught in his throat as he snatched it up. "I'm sorry, Anthony, but I have to do this. Please understand." The note was simple, heartbreaking, and the words cut deeper than any weapon ever could. She had left. She had chosen to walk away from him, from everything they had shared, and he had no idea why. Before he could process the shock, his communicator buzzed to life, interrupting his thoughts. It was his commander, voice urgent. "Anthony, we've got a breach in the perimeter. There's something big coming in, and we don't know who's behind it." He didn't respond immediately. He couldn't. He was too consumed by the image of Eleanor's betrayal. She hadn't betrayed him, not her, not when she had just begun to trust him. He stuffed the note into his pocket and sprinted to the main command tent, his heart racing. The perimeter breach meant there were enemies nearby. Enemy factions, or worse, those aligned with the ones who had sent her in the first place. The thought gnawed at him like a venomous snake. By the time he reached the command center, the camp was in full chaos. Soldiers scrambled for positions, weapons at the ready, and the drones flew overhead, scanning the area. Anthony grabbed a headset and patched into the comms, but the voices were filled with confusion. "What happened? Where's Eleanor?" he demanded, his voice sharp, barely containing his panic. His superior officer, Captain Dawson, didn't hesitate. "She's the one who triggered the breach. She's gone, Anthony. She took something. Classified intel. We've lost contact with her." "What the hell are you talking about?" Anthony growled. "She's been with us. She's been on our side. She's not a damn spy." "Looks like she was," Dawson replied coldly. "She took off in a shuttle, and she's got the code to override our security systems. We've been compromised." The ground beneath Anthony seemed to crumble away. The woman he had pulled from the fire, the woman he had saved, the one who had trusted him, who had shown him her weakness, had played him from the start. "No," Anthony muttered under his breath, not believing the words even as they left his mouth. "She can't have." But deep down he already knew the truth. Eleanor hadn't just been a weapon. She had been more than that. She had been prepared, trained. It was never about survival. It was always about something more. She was a part of something bigger, A plan designed to bring him down, to bring them all down. She betrayed us, Anthony growled, the realization sinking in like ice. She betrayed me. Dawson's voice came over the comms again, sharper now. I don't have time to explain. We need to focus. We've got incoming forces. Get your squad ready. The transmission cut off and Anthony stood frozen for a moment, staring at the wall of the tent. His pulse thundered in his ears, the noise of the camp surrounding him. His thoughts raced, but all he could feel was the loss. She had made a choice. She had chosen to leave, and the worst part was, he didn't know if she had ever cared, if any of it had been real. He moved quickly, swallowing the lump in his throat. There was no time for hesitation, no time for weakness. The camp was under attack, and the enemy wasn't just outside, it was inside too. As he suited up, grabbing his rifle and gear, his mind kept returning to the note, to the hollow apology in her words. He wanted to scream, to throw everything he had against the walls, but he couldn't afford to. His soldiers, his team, needed him now more than ever. But somewhere deep in his gut, he couldn't help but wonder. Had she left because she had to, or had she always planned to? The question gnawed at him, but there was no answer. No time for answers, only the heat of battle and the cold truth of betrayal. The enemy came in fast, faster than expected. The walls of the camp, once secure, were being breached from multiple angles. Anthony didn't have time to process his feelings about Eleanor. He didn't have time to wonder why she had left, why she had betrayed him. All he had was the overwhelming need to protect the people still in his care. But even as he led his squad into position, his mind kept drifting back to her, back to the woman who had been his ally one moment and his enemy the next. "Focus, Anthony!" Captain Dawson shouted over the comms, snapping him back to the present. "We need those drones on the north flank. Now!" He didn't respond. He didn't need to. His squad was already in motion, positioning themselves to hold the line. But the real threat was Eleanor. He could feel it. She was out there, somewhere, and she was no longer the fragile, terrified woman he had pulled from the flames. She was something more, something dangerous. A voice cut through his thoughts and he realized with a start that it was coming from his earpiece. "Anthony, this is Dawson. We have eyes on the shuttle. It's heading toward the northern border." His heart raced. Eleanor was in the shuttle, and she wasn't coming back. "Copy that," Anthony responded, his voice tight. "I'll intercept. Cover me." "Wait, are you sure about this?" Dawson asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "You know who she is now. She's a liability. You can't just—" "I'm going after her," Anthony snapped, "and I'll handle the consequences. Just cover me." Without waiting for another response, Anthony sprinted toward the shuttle launch pad. His heart was pounding in his chest, but it wasn't just from the physical exertion. It was the weight of everything. The betrayal, the loss, the doubt. He couldn't escape it. Not now. He wasn't just going after a traitor. He was going after the woman who had captured his heart, whether she had meant to or not. As he reached the pad, he was greeted by a sight that nearly stopped him in his tracks. Eleanor, standing there. Her eyes met his across the distance, the cold, calculated look in her gaze like a slap to his face. She was standing at the shuttle's controls, her back to him. Her posture was rigid, her expression unreadable. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know if he could even trust his own voice. But he had to say something. "You left," he said, his voice hoarse. "Why?" Eleanor didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned slowly, almost deliberately, to face him. Her expression was devoid of emotion, but her eyes betrayed the weight of her decision. "I had no choice," she said coldly, her voice steady but hollow. "I'm not your ally. I never was." A sharp pang hit Anthony's chest, but he refused to show it. He couldn't. Not now. Not when everything was slipping away so quickly. "Is this it then?" he asked, his tone raw. "You're just going to leave me behind? After everything?" Eleanor's eyes softened, just for a moment, but it was enough to stop his breath. She took a step toward him. "You think I wanted this?" she asked quietly, the words barely audible over the hum of the shuttle engines. "You think I wanted to be a weapon, a tool, a pawn in someone else's game?" Then why didn't you stay? Anthony demanded, his voice shaking. Why didn't you stay with me? She took another step forward, now close enough for him to see the pain etched deep within her features. Because I couldn't, she whispered. They made me. They designed me to be their perfect trap, Anthony. And I walked into it willingly. I didn't think I could escape it, but... Her voice faltered for just a second. It was the first time since he'd met her that she seemed truly lost. You can escape it, Anthony said, his voice soft but fierce. You don't have to be what they made you. Not anymore. You don't have to keep running. Her eyes flickered with something like hope, and for a brief moment he thought she might stay. But then, just as quickly, the hardness returned. She shook her head slowly. I'm already too far gone, she said. I've already crossed the line, Anthony. The war isn't over, and neither is the game. Before he could say another word, she turned back to the shuttle's control panel, fingers poised to activate the launch sequence. No, he shouted, reaching for her, but she was already stepping back, her gaze never leaving the control panel. I'm sorry, she whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. But I have to finish this, for both of us. And just like that, she hit the button. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle began to lift off, slowly at first, then faster, higher. Anthony stood frozen, his heart shattered. He had tried to save her. He had tried to reach her. But now all that was left was the echo of her departure. The shuttle disappeared into the night sky, leaving him standing alone on the launch pad. The shuttle disappeared into the sky, a single speck of light swallowed by the black expanse of space. Anthony stood there motionless, staring at the empty sky long after the sound of the engines had faded. The camp was still alive with the sounds of battle, but for him, time had frozen. He had lost her. Lost the one person who had felt like an anchor in the storm of his life. And yet, as the emptiness settled over him, there was something else, a flicker of understanding, of acceptance, buried deep in his chest. She had left because she had no choice. She had left because she was trying to protect him, just as she had been programmed to do all along. But what had been left unsaid in those last moments? Anthony's feet finally moved, his legs heavy as though the weight of the loss had physically taken its toll. His chest was tight with emotion, but he had no tears left to shed. The raw ache of betrayal had long since burned through him, and now he was left with only a deep sense of quiet sorrow. Days passed before Anthony saw her again. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't a rescue. It was an ambush. He had been tracking enemy movements in the outskirts of the war zone when he saw her, a silhouette against the backdrop of flames, standing at the edge of the battlefield. Eleanor. She was no longer the fragile, broken woman he had pulled from the ruins. She had changed, transformed in a way that took Anthony's breath away. She was still beautiful, but now there was a hardness to her, a controlled power that radiated from every inch of her. Her skin glowed faintly in the moonlight, and her eyes, once so vulnerable, were now sharp, calculating. She was a soldier now. Eleanor. His voice was hoarse, tentative, as he stepped closer. The chaos of the battlefield seemed miles away, irrelevant. She didn't move at first, her gaze locked on him, calculating, weighing. Anthony, she said, her voice colder than it had been before. I see you're still alive. I'm not the one who left, he said, the words coming out rougher than he intended. You didn't have to run, didn't I? She took a step forward, her eyes never leaving his. You're the soldier. You're the one who saves people. You should have known better than to trust me. I wasn't made for trust. You're more than they made you, Anthony said, his voice firm. You were never just the bait. You were always more than that. Eleanor's eyes softened for just a moment, the mask of control slipping, but then she blinked and the walls came back up, colder than before. You think you can change me? You think you can save me from this? I don't think I can save you, but I can fight with you, he said. We're in this together. No matter what they made you, no matter what you think you are, I'm not leaving your side. For a moment, Eleanor didn't respond. She simply watched him, the conflict in her eyes evident. The distance between them felt like a chasm, but the connection was undeniable. I can't go back to what I was, she whispered, her voice fragile now. I don't even know what I am anymore. I wanted to save you, but I couldn't. Anthony took a step toward her, then another. You don't have to be what they made you, Eleanor. You're not a tool, not anymore. You're free. You can choose who you want to be. Her gaze flickered, and for a moment, Anthony saw the woman he had pulled from the flames, the woman who had trusted him, the woman who had whispered her vulnerability, the woman he had saved. Then let me choose, she said, her voice breaking as she reached for him, her hands trembling. Let me choose you. Without thinking, without hesitation, Anthony closed the distance between them and took her hands in his. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not of her, not of what she had been made to do. He wasn't afraid of the future that had seemed so uncertain just moments before. All he knew was that he couldn't let her go. Not again. I choose you, Eleanor, he whispered, his voice barely audible. We choose each other. She pressed her forehead against his, the weight of their shared history settling between them. The battlefield could rage on, the war could continue, but in that moment, it didn't matter. Nothing mattered but the two of them. As the fires of war continued to burn in the distance, they stood together, not as enemies, not as pawns in a game, but as two people who had found something worth fighting for in the middle of the ashes. They had been broken, torn apart by forces beyond their control, but together they were something new. They were not bound by the past. They were bound by the choice they made to be something more, together.